Have you ever seen a cartoon or a political meme that has stood out to you on the internet? Something that is so good and hits the nail on the head so well that you want to save it, but you don't know where it comes from. Most times these things get copied and saved, and you don't know who came up with this amazing cartoon or this amazing meme. Well, today I'm really lucky because I'm speaking to George Alexopoulos, who does this for a living. He's an illustrator, and right now he's probably the number one political illustrator, at least that I could tell, in the modern culture war. He has made some cartoons that are very absurd, very hyperbolic, very, honestly, just amazing in terms of hitting the point that he's trying to make, and that so many of us follow. So you're going to see some of them while we talk about them. If you're listening, look him up, George Alexopoulos. You're going to know exactly what I'm talking about. This is someone who makes memes for a living. Although he doesn't call them memes, we'll get to them. But it's a really interesting and unique conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Please listen. All right, George, welcome to the show. So we're off
That's
to
our
a
professional welcome.
really professional start. So
It all goes downhill from here.
Exactly. So you're a really interesting person to me because, and I'm not just saying that in a biased way because you're Greek and I'm Greek and we all like to boost each other's egos.
We are interesting people. It's true.
We are interesting. But the way I discovered you is through these cartoons or these memes, or what do you want to call these? What do we call these? Are they memes or are they cartoons or are they art? How do we describe these?
As citizens of the internet, I think I can't have the right to call my stuff memes. That memes just happen. It can't be controlled. But what I do is I guess I just make comic strips, 4-panel comic strips most of the time. Sometimes they're single panel. At least that's what I'm recently known for. And they're just cultural, socio-political, whatever's happening that day. It can be in the realm of gaming or politics, culture in general. Just anything that pops into my head as interesting or funny or worth drawing something about. And if people share it around, it's no longer mine. They can do whatever they want with it. And then it either goes viral or I just do another one the next day or whatever.
So then explain to me how this started, because the first one I saw from you, which blew me away, and I didn't know it was you. These things get away from you, like you say, right? So it gets copied, It gets sent around. And someone sent me this comic strip, and it's of Joe Biden, and it's hard to describe to people who are listening, but it's of Joe Biden looking very old and decrepit, and absorbing the blackness out of a girl. Is that like the best way? It sounds ridiculous to explain it, but it's so visual and comedically, it's something really unique. I mean, the fact that you know how to actually draw and you obviously have actual artistic talent is one thing. That's why I don't think it's a meme, because it is sort of artistic. But the fact that you can take something that is so current, which of course at that time was Joe Biden saying, if you don't vote for me, then you're not black, and turn it into something so visual and kind of absurd is, I think, partly what helped you like blow up so much, right? So, I mean, how does this start? Have you been making these for a while? How did you get into this?
Well, I had always been doing 4-panel strips as an exercise. So even 10 years ago, I was doing a sort of like Charlie Brown, Calvin and Hobbes 4-panel kind of slice of life strip called Bite Size. And I got used to the pacing of 4 panels as, setup, climax, cool down. And that's sort of the pace of a 4-panel strip. You want to sort of create a certain beat, punchline, something like that. So I've been used to I've been reading these kind of comics my whole life, right? Charlie Brown, I grew up with it. So when it came to constructing a strip like that, that was definitely not the first strip I did in that style. I've been doing them for years. But that's the one that I guess showed me what the magic formula is, if there is such a thing, where it's current event strips they're like a ripe fruit, I say. where they're only ripe for like 2 days, maybe. So whatever's in the news, whatever everyone's talking about, if I can think of a funny joke that day, that morning, so I'll like get up at 6 in the morning or something, and I'm flipping through Twitter or something like that. I see everyone's talking about Joe Biden again. Oh, the "you ain't black" thing. So then I'll be in the shower. Half hour later, I'll realize, oh, there's a really, as an illustrator, I guess, just images would pop into your head, right? But you don't have to be an illustrator. The only difference is, I guess, is because I am able to draw decently, I guess, I'm able to actually execute on the idea relatively fast. So I have a few hours, maybe, before a certain time of day when people are checking Twitter. So by the time I get out of the shower, I have my breakfast. I have to draw a strip in like 2 hours, or it's not funny anymore, or people won't even know what I'm talking about the next day. So that's the formula, I guess. And sometimes I get lucky, like with that Joe Biden strip. I have a collection of these strips. There's hundreds of them, and that's just, it happened to be right place, right time. That it happens once in a while, but most of the time I think just I have a moderate audience that sees my stuff, likes my stuff, shares it around, and we just move on to the next one.
So you started doing these, you post them, I see at least predominantly on Twitter. That's where you sort of gotten a pretty big following. You're on Instagram as well, and you obviously have an Etsy store.
Yeah.
The Joe Biden one, for example, which, again, to describe it, he absorbs the blackness out of a girl and leaves her shriveling on the ground, white,
just tired,
right? Tired and destroyed. And you did these, other ones to give people an example. Early in the pandemic, there was a trend where, although we're supposed to venerate healthcare workers, there was a trend of compilation videos where these nurses would be dancing around to like Thriller or whatever song it is in hospital rooms. And it seems to have pissed off everyone, as far as I could tell. No one thought like, oh, this is like a cute other than nurses, I guess. But it seems like everyone was outraged by that. And again, you sort of applied your creativity to it, where you just thought, this looks so stupid, that what you did was you contrasted them dancing to, a woman saying goodbye to, who was it, her father or something, for the last time.
Yeah.
And again, it's so, there's an absurdity to the cartoons because they're sort of hyperbolic, but you're making a point out of how absurd things are. So, I mean, politically speaking, I mean, to call people political cartoonists, I don't know if you go by that title.
I try not to.
You try not to? Why do you try not to? What is it about that title?
It puts you in a box that, I mean, my political strips, even though I think that's what I'm kind of known for this past year or so, I've been making comics for 15 years, like books, and I've done all kinds of work in the realm of art. Unfortunately, my political comics and socio-political stuff has sort of painted me into a corner where I'm no longer able, I'm pretty sure, I can't get work anywhere in the mainstream, probably for the rest of my career. At least for the next 10 years, who knows?
Wow, you think so, eh?
Oh, nobody's going to hire me, at least not under my real name. I would have to use a pseudo, and I would have to have a really cool employer who won't out me. If I was to work for, I can't work for like Marvel, DC, even though I'm told my stuff is at least as good as theirs. I have, real comic books, like actual like issues. I print them at home, but I'm told that they're good. But because I'm sorry, what was the original question? I don't want to go too far.
Well, no, you can continue. I mean, look, I was asking why you don't want to go by political cartoonist, and it sounds like you didn't set out to be a political cartoonist, so you don't want to be called that. You set out to be an artist, and it turns out that it was serendipitous or not serendipitous that you ended up becoming political. And it sounds like, I don't want to say you're sort of pigeonholed in a corner because you've been successful with it, but it sounds as though that due to the fact that your cartoons and your work, your illustrations have become political, you feel that you're somewhat canceled in the illustrator world.
It's kind of a big package to unpack. But as far as my daily, what I make, I mean, I read the news a lot. I'm just that type of person that I always want to. I'm curious of what's happening now, culturally, politically, whatever. I just want to. When I'm working on my long form books, let's say, I listen to a lot of. I won't name names, but like I listen to a lot of news online and stuff. And I just want to know what's going on. And then whenever I hear patterns of a lot of people are talking about this thing, when I hear it over and over in my head, usually these images will pop into my head, or, oh, wouldn't it be funny if this happened? And sort of, if you mentioned an absurd way of like, what if I drew Joe Biden eating somebody whole or something? What if I made a whole book of that? Just to sort of, because even before the elections happened and everything, it was a very scary time of like what's going to happen next. Nobody knows. And it was sort of, I've been saying lately that humor is sort of that pressure release valve, and people, they just want to have a little chuckle so that something that is actually very scary or sad, like the Dancing Nurses strip, is actually incredibly sad. Where she, the joke is that it's so serious, but then there's the dancing nurses in the background. So like, we'll have a little laugh, even though this is a very serious thing. And occasionally, I don't know, like it just happens that politics was, lots of people were talking about politics, and that just happened to be what's in my head, bouncing around in my head. So if I say, oh, I can think of a funny strip about this, it's just what I've been digesting lately. Sometimes, like right now, I'm in the middle of production on an actual long series, so I don't have as much time to do my political stuff. And it's not like a full-time job or anything. It's sort of a part-time job. So I kind of have to find a way to earn a living and please the audience over here, please this audience over here. So it's a little bit of a weird freelancing situation, but I don't expect to be hired at any mainstream publisher anytime soon. To answer that part of the question,
it's interesting to me, and I guess like this is just part of being in 2021, is the fact that you're not allowed anymore to just like be mildly into something. You're not allowed to just be someone who is an illustrator and you have your own world with your own style, and you can also be into politics on occasion. Right? As a hobby, recreationally. You can't really do that anymore. It almost sounds like if you dip your toe in politics and make one political statement, whether it's in words or whether it's in illustration, that's what you are now, and you're considered an enemy to some people, right? Like, has that been bizarre that, people have like, again, your work has been popular enough where I think it's infuriated the other side, especially because I think the left is sort of seen as more creative. So I almost wonder if like what you're doing is very cultural and very creative. I wonder if it's sort of invading their space and they feel threatened by that. But I've noticed you've been like attacked for it.
They like to believe they have the monopoly on creative stuff. I once got into an argument with someone, and like I was saying, there are conservative artists, we just can't earn a living at it, so we have a harder time producing work because, I mean, honestly, we live on donations and a few book sales here and there, at least the indie creators. We have our names out there, we have our work out there, and sometimes we can scrape by, but a lot of us are just doing this part-time. I had a bunch of lefties, and for the record, like, I consider myself fairly centrist. I lean conservative, but I don't agree with a lot of things the Republican Party does and all that stuff, whatever. I've come out as I liked Trump enough to vote for him. I don't think he's perfect or anything, but I didn't think that there was any viable alternative. So whatever, that's their problem. Anyway, to get back to the question, the lefties were mad for... All right, let's put it this way. I created a couple of characters where there's the tea-sipping guy wearing a red shirt, and he has a shirt that says "I like America" on it. And he's just chilling, sipping his tea, and then this hysterical maniac comes out of the bushes like, hey, are you enjoying your copium? And he's just chilling, and she's like, ha, 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 but she's also crying and screaming. And I've done variants on that strip at maybe 4 or 5 times, because I keep thinking of new situations where it's, at least to me, there are variants, but they get mad at me because, oh, it's the same joke. You're creating a straw man. But the responses, if you read the responses, they are that person. And they're saying, that's not me. That's not me. And then they did this campaign a few weeks ago where they copied my strip, except they kind of flipped the characters around. I don't understand. I don't even know how to unpack it, but like they were offended that I strawmanned them. They behaved like the strawman, and then they copied my joke and saying, look how unfunny he is. But everyone laughed at their joke. So
Right.
they proved that the joke was potent. So anyway, yeah, they were mad at me because I guess I'm not allowed to exist. People like me are, you can't be funny and conservative and be an artist, which is interesting because I've always felt a little out of place. This is going to sound very strange. You know, I go to art school or something, or I hang out with the art kids in high school, or if I go to a convention, I try to talk to other artists. And I don't know if it's my personality. I'm just kind of a wallflower type of person. I don't like to talk a lot unless I'm talked to. Just generally kind of a shy person. But I've never been able to really socialize with a lot of them. And I don't know if we just have different politics or I don't know. I just never felt comfortable. So I don't know what to make of that, but you know, I'm alive. I exist. I'm told my art is decent and my jokes are decent. So
Yeah. Well, look, man, it's more than decent. I think you're being way too modest because, I mean, that
sorry.
copium one, the one related to, and again to describe it to people, it's sort of like you're weaving a tale that would take me, 4 paragraphs to explain what it is, but you can in one image just explain it. Explain the left leaning voter who got their way this time and they want to see you freak out the way they freaked out 4 years ago. And
Yeah.
then you don't. And that makes them freak out and copy your comic and attack you for it. It's very actualizing and it's very sort of poetic in that sense. But, I share your thoughts on sort of the creative community. Like, I really wanted to go to film school, and I did like a lot of courses on film. I was really into film. I wanted to be a director, and I found this similar thing where I was like a really creative type, but I could never quite feel at home at these different conventions and classes and that sort of thing. So I do wonder what it is maybe it is just the political aspect of it. But there's definitely something there. I mean, what do what is it like for you now that you've come out and you are what you are? How is it communicating with other artists who you knew before? Or, I mean, what is the artistic community? How has it sort of seen you? How has it observed you?
I could answer that question better except for the COVID problem. So, like, if there were conventions, I want to start going to conventions again and sort of see if anything is different. Because before I was known, let's say, um, I would table at conventions. And if anyone doesn't know, it's just basically you rent a table or half a table, you put your books out, and, people come by, they shake your hand, they buy one of your books or ask for, a little sketch and an autograph, something like that. You sit there all day, and it's very tiring. And then at the end of the day, you hang out with other artists and socialize and network and all that stuff for like a weekend at a convention, something like that. So I had a few chums who I was friendly with, other web cartoonists who I won't name. Long story short, I guess as my more political stuff started, I was friendly with them, even though they like. I'm trying to decide how far to rewind. My jokes back in the day were somewhat Christian in nature. So, like, the main character of my 4-panel strip was religious, and a lot of the jokes were like, I don't know, punchline had to do with church stuff or something like that. It was whatever. It was wholesome though. So I was known, at least in the little group, as he's a Christian, but he's cool. He's
Okay.
he's
So it
chill.
wasn't Joe Biden sucking the blackness out of a girl. It was more
No,
wholesome
not
stuff.
yet.
Not yet.
No, it wasn't anything. Was there anything? There were a couple of times where can I say
Yeah, yeah, you can
PO'd?
swear. Yeah.
Sorry, I pissed off a couple of like feminish people where there was this one character who was like Lucy in Charlie Brown, who was kind of always on the case of the main character because she was jealous of sharing her husband with him, of like in terms of like he's his best friend, so she doesn't want to hang out or split his time between them. And it's like, why are you always making her a jerk? Why do you hate women? Is some of the questions I would get. I'm like, well, I don't hate women. This is just the one character. So I would sometimes get feedback like that, but it was stupid. And then there was another time, do I even want to tell this story? I'm going to dig myself a grave here. But like,
No, go
a
for
gay
it.
kid comes into a high school class, like kicks the door open, and it's like, "Hey, everyone, I'm gay." And then all the kids are like celebrating, like, "Oh man!" And then one kid's in the back, like, "Who cares? You're not special. Nobody's special. Let's just live our lives." And. And then some people are like, "Oh, why do you hate gay people?" I'm like, "Oh, okay. So this is where we're going." And so the more I thought about like provocative strips, it's like my politics are actually, as far as I know, quite mild. Of like, just live and let live. Pretty much, those are my whatever. So anytime I see obnoxious people thinking that they're special and acting like they're better than other people, I'm like, okay, that's free game for me. Maybe. So the topics I choose. Man, I'm really getting off topic. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry
No,
to all
no,
the listeners.
this is the way it goes with podcasting. Trust me, it's all good. But no,
All right.
you're basically talking about the fact that you you are who you are, and it's almost like the community shifted around you. Um,
Yeah, they became more outspoken. The people who would have tolerated me and consider me intolerant, now it's like, all right, maybe he shouldn't have the fame or recognition that he has now. Or like they'd accuse me of being, ex-phobic, phobic of this or that, whatever. Whereas I'm just trying to make the point, several points. Or maybe I'm just trying to make light of something that's very serious that I think shouldn't be taken so seriously.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, going back to the current events aspect of it, I think maybe that within itself is what obviously it helps with the attention, but maybe that's where a lot of the issues come from. I noticed, unless I'm remembering this completely wrong, you did a Captain America strip recently related to the Jordan Peterson thing, right?
yes. Yeah.
And again, for those who don't know, shortly after my podcast with Dr. Peterson, it was revealed that he essentially was the inspiration for a Red Skull villain character in a Captain America issue. And, it was sort of this idea that the villain had his own 10 rules for life, I think it was. And it just became this thing in the whole intellectual dark web that Jordan Peterson is the inspiration for Red Skull now.
Yeah.
And a meme began circulating which would intentionally juxtapose the ugly evilness of Red Skull with the wholesome, mild, inspirational quotes of Jordan Peterson. And again, you, beyond the memes, actualize that in such a way where, you have this comic strip of him getting complimented, I think, on the street, and you have like this angry, seething Captain America,
Yeah.
going crazy over this villain. Like that sort of thing, again, and people listening to me could think I'm nuts in explaining it because it sounds esoteric, but it's not esoteric because hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are plugged into the absurdity of this modern culture war. And it seems like, at least visually, you're at the center of that. So how do you, how do you obtain this inspiration? Is it as simple as you just go about your life and you see this is happening to Jordan Peterson and you're like, hey, what if I did this? And you just do it? Or how many hours does it take you to really actualize that?
A strip, if the image is clear in my head, because you have to think of these strips in 4 steps: A, B, C, D, right? Setup, 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 punchline, something like that. If the idea is clear, it'll take maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, something like that. I try to post a strip early in the morning because that gives it a healthy life cycle throughout the day. Because a good strip maybe only lasts for 24 hours, something like that, as far as growth and people seeing it. In the case of the Peterson one, the joke was and they're barely jokes. He was walking down the street. He was telling a story. He's told the story before of like he was in LA with his wife Peterson, and this kid and his father walk up to him and they're like, "Hey man, you helped me reunite with my father," something like that. "Thank you for helping me." And then Peterson's like, "Oh, that's so cool," and they're smiling and shaking hands. And then you see on a very distant rooftop someone like Captain America, and you zoom in and he's like, "This evil needs to be stopped." And what's interesting about that is like there's two levels of that where viscerally it's funny to see a pissed off Captain America, and that's stupid, and I'll have my Monty Python haha. But then on the another level, you think about the joke more, and it's like, wait, this actually plugs into everything. Every time he's been criticized for the past 2 years, anyone who's read a Peterson book or listened to him speak, he's actually like the coolest. But he's not evil. He's not trying to like take over the world or tell young men to take over the world. Like he's actually helping people, and that for us in the know, we know that he's not evil. And then Captain America calling him evil would then make Captain America evil, because the joke was based off of an actual comic where Red Skull was quoting Peterson, and Captain America's like, yes, he's seducing the young men of our culture with his book 10 Rules of Life. And and it was written by people at Marvel who I guess people have been saying Marvel's been woke for a long time, and they just produce trash, ideological, one-sided garbage, and ruining all the characters that everyone's grown up loving and all that stuff. I'm not a huge American comic reader, but like,
if you want to listen to my full 1-hour conversation with George Alexopoulos, you can find us for free on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Just look up Cancel This. We get into a lot of really interesting topics, including our backgrounds. Check it out. Thank you so much, and until next time, I'm Angelo Isidoro. All right, that was George Alexopoulos. You can find his work at all the links he mentioned, as well as down in the description if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please follow us, share it with your friends. Tell me what you thought of this. This was a really different conversation with someone who's really embedded in the culture war. I'm curious to get your feedback on this. Until next time, I'm Angelo Isidoro. If you liked that video and want to see more, please make sure to subscribe to the Post Millennial. For daily news and content, please go to thepostmillennial.com and consider becoming a member. For $5 a month, you can get rid of all the advertisements on the site. If you like what I'm wearing on my head, you can go to shop.postmillennial.com, where we have beanies, mugs, and t-shirts. Please consider supporting the Post Millennial however you can. It's massively appreciated. Thank you.